The sharing rights have been given, sir.
Thank you. Thank you.
Pankaj, sir, you can also be the co-host.
Okay. No problem.
Yes.
No problem.
Thank you for joining in. It's our privilege to have you all on board with us. Good evening, our esteemed guest, Dr. Pankaj Trivedi, sir, Dr. Satyendra Upadhyay, sir, Director, International Relations, Somaiya Vidya Vihar University, Dr. Purushottam Sabharwal, sir, Dr. Brajesh Bulia, and all our faculty members present with us, and my dear friends. Union Finance Minister on Tuesday presented Union Budget for financial year 2022-23 with focus on infrastructure spending. In her budget speech, the Finance Minister said the budget seeks to lay the foundation and give a blueprint to steer the economy over the Amrit Kal of next 25 years, from India at 75 to India at 100. A quick check to my co-host this evening. Hi, Parth. So, Parth, what are your views on today's lecture topic, Demystifying the Union Budget 2022?
Yeah, so thank you, Yash. First of all, I believe that the Union Budget 2022 is people friendly and progressive, and the financial document presented by the Union Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman ma'am is full of new possibilities of more infrastructure, more investment, more growth, and more jobs. Other than this, I believe that budget is focusing on growth more, and this budget has brought a new confidence of development in the mindset of people of India. And this budget, along with strengthening the economy, will create many more opportunities for the common man. Also, I expect that Indian equities to close this year at a level higher than the previous year. And also, it will be helpful for us to gain more and more insights from this session.
All right. Thank you, Parth. So, in order to gain deeper insights on Union Budget, the Guest Lectures Committee is delighted to host a guest lecture on insights and interpretation of Union Budget 2022-23 by a finance expert, focused and passionate educator, Professor Pankaj Trivedi, sir, who have been kind enough to spare their valuable time and come on platform to enlighten us about the budget 2022. Dr. Trivedi is Dean of Faculty of Commerce and Business Studies, Somaiya Vidya Vihar University. He is Professor and Head Department of Finance and Law, KJ Somaiya Institute of Management. He is also a visiting faculty at DHBW University, Germany, and has received Best Faculty in Finance Award from Higher Education Forum and Bombay Stock Exchange. He holds in-depth expertise on the topic of Indian economy and would enlighten us with the steps taken by our government to maintain stability in the economy. Sir, it's an honor to have you here. And I think this is going to be a lecture which is going to be packed with not only knowledge, but a lot of experience which our distinguished faculties bring on the table. So without any delay, I would like to call Professor Trivedi to share his insights on Budget 2022. So we and this virtual podium is all yours. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Yes. Thank you very much. So at the outset, thank you very much, guest lecture committee of KJ Somaiya Institute of Management, Dr. Satyendra sir, for organizing this lecture, my senior colleague, Professor Sabharwal, my dear colleague, Dr. Brajesh Bolia, my other colleagues, students, friends, students from guest lecture committee, Utkarsh, Priyanka, Sanil, Ishita, all others. Thank you very much for giving me this opportunity to share my understanding, my experience with the budget with all of you. So I will share my presentation, which I have prepared with you, all of you, and let us talk something about what is there in the Union Budget 22-23. Yeah, I think you are able to see my slide, all of you?
Yes, sir.
Okay, fine. So as all of you know that budget is one of the most important policy statement. It is a very important public policy announcement, and the people of our country are eagerly waiting for this announcement. It is not that only economist or policymaker, but even a common man is also very keen, taking interest in the budget and want to know what are the proposals given by the finance minister in the budget. So this is naturally because this policy announcement has far-reaching implication on the economy. Not only on the economy, union budget has implication on family budget also. I think all of you are aware. So that's the reason everybody takes interest. And I'm glad that students are also taking interest. In fact, one of the student has given comment also in brief in the beginning. So it is really great that students and people are taking interest in the subject like budget, which is otherwise considered to be a very dry subject. But I will try to make it interesting as far as I can. Yeah. So friends, whenever the budget is declared, each one evaluate the budget as per their own expectation, as per their own knowledge and own wisdom. Typically, any policy announcement like budget is to be evaluated on these four grounds. To my mind, budget evaluation is to be done on these four grounds: that in the budget, what are the growth measures you find? What are the measures announced which leads to economic growth and development? That is what you have to look at. What are the measures you find in the budget which gives stability to the economy? So growth measures, stability measure, reform measures. Reform, as all of you know, is ongoing activity. So in every budget, several reform measures are also taken. So the budget which is presented, what are the reform measures you find? And finally, budget is a financial exercise, as all of you know. The government put before the people estimated income and estimated expenditure, and they try to match the two. So how the government is planning their fiscal management, that is also to be looked at for evaluating the budget. That is what I feel. So I always analyze the budget taking into account these four parameters. So let us see in current budget how these measures you find, and on this front, what is the position. Now, if you talk about the current budget, all of you know it is on the backdrop of election, which is already announced in the 5 states, right? So people were having expectation that this year's budget will be purely political budget, right? It means so many benefits will be given to the people, so many schemes were introduced, and thereby government will try to get the votes. So that was the expectation of the people. But then this was proved wrong by the finance minister. I'm sure all of you agree with me, because in the current budget, you must have observed there is no any direct benefit announcement as such, right? There is no any catchy or some landmark announcement or something like that, which is useful to impress the people, which is useful to make the budget political budget. So you don't find any of these kind of announcement in this budget. In this budget, what you find is growth measures, right? So instead of giving directly benefit to the people, the budget has certain proposal, budget has certain announcement, which will lead to growth and development. And thereby, people in medium to long term is going to get the benefit. As somebody has made the introductory remark, that something like Amrit Kal, you know. So the announcement in the budget that you will see are such which is useful to give the benefits to the people, not directly but indirectly. So let us see what are these announcements and what are its implications. Let us try to understand, read between the lines. Let us try to understand the proposals given in the budget. So, to my mind, this budget is based on these 4 pillars. Actually, the finance minister has talked about 7. Many of you must be knowing those also, but these are the 4 important pillars in the current budget I found. One is PM Gati Shakti, right, which is infrastructure development measure. That is the first important pillar to my mind of this budget. Second announcement and group of measures which are proposed by the government are with respect to inclusive development. As all of you know, in our country, inclusive growth, financial inclusion, all these are priority area. And the reason is very simple. We have remarkable growth, right? All of you know, India is one of the fastest growing economy in the world. But the point is whether this benefit of the growth is reaching to the last person of the society. So that is where some issues and some problems are there. So naturally, financial inclusion will get the priority, just like infrastructure development in Gati Shakti. The third important pillar, what I found is productivity enhancement. All of you are well aware that simply increasing production is not enough. What is important is productivity and efficiency. So in the current budget, you will find some measures which are useful to increase productivity, particularly productivity of farm sector. There are several measures you will find in this budget. And finally, investment. See, friends, you must be knowing that investment is absolutely necessary for rapid economic growth and development, right? All economists will agree. Economics, otherwise, you know, is highly controversial subject. It is so controversial that it is said that when there are 2 economists, there are 3 opinions. It is that kind of controversial subject. But on certain matters, all economists agrees. And this is one of such matter. If you want growth, capital formation is absolutely required. If you want growth, investment is indispensable. This is something on which all economists will agree. Otherwise, they will not agree. Each one is having their own expertise. But this is one of the measures that also you will find. So these 4 pillars, how it is covered in the budget, let us talk about it. So I will begin with first, what are the growth measures that are taken in the budget, right? So as Gati Shakti is talking about, and other infrastructure. So infrastructure development is emphasized. Anybody who has listened to the finance minister or anybody who has gone through the important proposal of the budget can say that in this budget, infrastructure development is emphasized. And that is required also. You know, in a country like India, infrastructure development is absolutely necessary. As all of you know, that India is a country of village. Connectivity between village and town, rural areas and urban areas, that is transport. For that, you need infrastructure. Power is another infrastructure. Water facility is third infrastructure. So infrastructure development is absolutely indispensable for economic growth of the country, for development of agriculture sector, development of industry, even development of service sector, even human development. When you say infrastructure, it is not only physical infrastructure, even social infrastructure is also included, like school, colleges, health measures, and others. So that is all required for improving and developing quality of the population. So emphasis on infrastructure by allocating the resources to the extent of nearly 4% of GDP is one of the right direction step, according to me, because by developing infrastructure, the country would develop. At global level, you can find dozens such examples. A country is able to make progress by developing infrastructure. If you don't want to go too far, China is the best example. China is having excellent infrastructure development, and that is partly responsible for the growth of that country. So, friends, in this budget, considerable amount of resources are allocated for infrastructure development is a right measure for growth to my mind. That is the first point which I want to put before you. The second important thing which I was talking to you was about capital expenditure. Just a couple of minutes back, I told you that capital formation and investment is absolutely necessary for economic growth. It is the investment which will lead to increase in output. It is the investment which will lead to increase in job opportunities, employment in the country, export of the country. So all these parameters are depending and linked to the investment, and particularly capital expenditure, adding the stock of capital into the country. The students easily understand capital expenditure, revenue expenditure, right? So in this budget, a large amount of money, nearly 3% of the GDP, precisely 2.9, but almost 3% of the GDP, in absolute amount, 7.5 lakh crore. And this is not a less amount by any standard, right? So this is the amount which the government is planning to invest, capital expenditure and capital investment. And why this is a growth measure? Because naturally, these kind of expenditure in investment will lead to rise in the aggregate demand. This increase in the aggregate demand will also attract private sector investment. See, in the present budget, there is one criticism also, that there are no sufficient measures taken for attracting or increasing private sector investment. That criticism you must have heard. Some of the experts have said. But let me tell you, in this budget, government has taken responsibility. And there is a reason, there is a logic behind this. Because of the pandemic, there is a less consumer demand. When there is less consumer demand, private sector will hesitate to make fresh investment. So the responsibility is taken by the government. Because private sector investment is less due to lower domestic consumer demand, therefore government has taken leadership and government is proposing to invest large amount of money. With the result that because of the multiplier effect, even private sector investment will also be attracted, right? So in this budget, you find measures right from drinking water, which is a basic necessity, right? One of the proposal you must have heard, providing drinking water facility in the rural area. Right from drinking water facility to transport, communication, linking rural urban areas, all these areas are covered for investment and capital expenditure. So that would certainly lead to growth. That would certainly attract private sector investment, and the engine of growth will be fast. So these are some of the growth measures. Even in this slide, some of growth measures you can list out. Look at the first point of this slide. Measures for agriculture sector. See, government has taken some of the very important steps for agriculture sector and thereby leading to the growth. One of the big step is food procurement program. In the present budget, a huge food procurement program is planned, and large amount of money, nearly 2.57 lakhs crores, government is planning to give to the farmers by way of minimum support price. Now, whenever any allocation is done for farm sector, it is also subject to criticism. People criticize that also. But let me tell you, friends, looking at the ground realities of our country, every government has to give more benefits and more measures every government has to take for the farm sector. Reason because the large population is depending on that sector of our country. If you look at contribution to the GDP, it is not substantial. All of you know, contribution of farm sector to our GDP is hardly 15-16%. So that contribution is not very large, but number of people depending on agriculture sector, population that depends upon agriculture sector, it is slightly more than 50%. So when the government is putting income in the hand of this large population, what happens? Their capacity of spending, the demand for various goods and services will increase. And that will have impact on other sector also. Probably you may be knowing that our industrial growth, I repeat, the industrial growth of our country, particularly FMCG sector, if you talk about FMCG sector, to a large extent, it depends upon agricultural growth. Because the goods which are produced by this industry, where is the market? The major market is in the rural areas. All of you know, nowadays, large corporate, large banks, and every business, they are looking at the rural areas of our country as a potential. So, when the government is proposing to increase the income of the farmer, that is also a step which will lead to growth, right? Don't be under the impression that it is a political step so as to please the farmer. Farmer has done a lot of agitation and therefore to please the farmer all these steps are taken. No, it is required taking into account ground realities of our country. Another growth measure with respect to agriculture sector that you see is increasing the productivity. How to increase productivity? Well, there are several ways, but government to a large extent is depending on now technology, isn't it, right? Digitization, modern technology. For example, in the proposal you must have read that drone technology government is planning to estimate the crop output for land records of our country. So these type of technology, when they are using for agriculture sector, definitely it will lead to increase in productivity. See, farm mechanization, high yielding variety seeds, use of fertilizer, that is all old now. That is also useful to increase productivity, but that are all old measures. That were the measures of mid-60s when green revolution was there, right? Now the government is planning to digitize the record of the rural area, estimating the crop output, giving information to the farmers, not only that of market price, but even climate. Government is planning to give information to the farmers about the change in climatic condition. So these are growth measures. Okay. So agriculture sector and the allocation to agriculture sector is certainly useful for economic growth. Next important sector for our economy is MSME. I think I need not tell you significance of MSME, micro, small and medium enterprise in our country. All of you must be knowing that nearly 1/3 of our industrial output, 1/3 is coming from MSME sector. Nearly 30% of GDP is coming from MSME sector, as high as 30% of the total industrial output, right? Nearly 11 lakhs people are 11 crore. 11 crore people are directly depending on MSME sector And now the sector is planning to reach this figure to 15 crores. So perhaps MSME sector would be one of the largest employment sector, taking into account all MSME industries, right? Second advantage of MSME sector is they are scattered. They are not concentrating at a particular place. In every state, you will find MSME, right? So they are playing important role for balanced regional growth, what you call balanced regional growth, right? So when such sector is given some support, when such sector is given some funding provision for finance, definitely it will be useful for the growth. So the credit guarantee scheme, which was started for MSME sector in the pandemic, that the government is extending for further 1 year, so that this sector will get support and sector will come out of the problems that they are currently facing because of the lower demand and the pandemic situation. Next important growth measure to my mind is support to the startups, right? Startup is also contributing to a large extent in our economy. I do agree with you that success rate of startup is very less, isn't it, right? So even that way also this measure is criticized. There are some people, they say success of the startup rate is very less. So there is no point in giving more benefits to the startup, right? But startup is also having several advantage. For example, startup to some extent is also helping us to reduce problem of unemployment, right? When there are no jobs available or limited jobs available, you employ yourself. Self-employment is an effective solution to the problem of unemployment. And here startup can play important role. Startup will not only give you employment, but give employment to few others also. Because in that unit, you will hire some more people as well. So the benefits to the startup, tax concession to the startup is extended, is also a growth measure. Tax concession to new manufacturing units is also one of the growth measure to my mind. So friends, in this budget, you will find several growth measure, and that's the reason we say that this budget is a growth oriented budget. Another major thrust in the budget is infrastructure, and that is covered under PM Gati Shakti, right? So here, transport infrastructure is emphasized. I already talked to you the significance of rural urban connectivity, and their transport plays very important role. So in the budget, the target is fixed to construct national highway to the extent of 25,000 kilometers. All this leads to growth and development because there will be increase in the aggregate demand for various products, goods and services. Direct increase in the demand like steel, cement and other materials that is used to construct highways. But there are indirect increase in demand also because the people who will get employment in these projects, they will demand various other goods and services. Sorry. So this is how the country will be put up on the growth path. Same way railway. On railway front also, the announcement is already made to start 400 new trains. So this is also a growth measure. Development of airport, developing port, mass transport. Government is now giving emphasis on mass transport, right? Government is giving emphasis on clean energy transport. The more emphasis is given on electric vehicle. So that is useful not only to the environment, but it is of great useful to get great use to us because we'll be able to reduce our dependence on oil imports, right? Oil is a very sensitive commodity for our country, all of you know. So if more and more transport is migrating from traditional oil and what you call other traditional method of transport to electricity, then it will lead to reduction in the import bill. At the same time, it will be friendly to the environment. Linking of the 5 rivers, that is also announced. India is a country which is in tropical zone, all of you know. Yeah. Fortunately, India is having sufficient rainfall. So there should not be shortage of water in India, right? India is having many permanent rivers, permanent, they are not seasonal. India is having many large rivers. So there should not be any shortage of water in our country. But as you know, even on waterfront, there is a lot of inequality. There are certain parts of the country where ample water is available, but there are many parts of the country where there is a shortage of water. So what is this problem? This is a problem of water management. It is not that we have less water, but it is a problem of water management. So on water management front also, a step is announced in this budget, like for example, linking of the rivers. By linking the rivers, more and more areas are covered under water facility. So these infrastructure measures definitely will lead to growth and development, right? So this is second thrust. The third one is inclusive development. As I already told you, India is a country where GDP growth is good, but even then we have poverty, isn't it? If you take a rough estimate, nearly 30% of our population is below poverty line. If you take official figure will put around 24, 25, 26% in that range. But nearly 30% of our population is below poverty line. So they are deprived of the benefit of economic growth. Whatever growth is there, that is cornered by few people, isn't it, right? What you call problem of distribution, isn't it, right? Problem of distribution is to be solved. And for that purpose, inclusive development is very important. The last person of the society should get benefit of the growth. Inequalities of income, inequalities of wealth, inequalities of industrial assets, all that probably you must be aware of. So I'm not going into those statistics and details, right? So when the country is having high growth, in spite of that, if there is a problem like poverty and unemployment, then that is to be addressed through inclusive growth and development. So on financial inclusion front, several measures are announced. If you have listened to the finance minister's speech, I think nearly 4 to 5 times she has referred to financial inclusion, right? So several measures like focus on agriculture sector, that is for financial inclusion. Financial inclusion in rural area is more serious than in urban areas because opportunities in rural areas are limited. Very limited opportunity, agriculture sector and small scale industries and rural artwork. Apart from that, there are limited opportunities for growth, development, employment and income. So focus on agriculture sector is a right step for inclusive development, right? Similarly, when you are talking about unequal distribution of benefits in the country, then probably you must be knowing northeastern region. In our country, the development in northeastern region is relatively less. So for that purpose, there is something called PM Divine scheme. It is already announced, right? So under this scheme, the focus area is northeast region. So government is serious about balanced regional growth, right? That is what this step is showing to my mind. Okay. Same way, for inclusive development, you have to increase the real income of the people. You have to provide basic necessities of life to the people. And one of the basic necessity is house, isn't it? Which is having acute shortage in our country. So under the scheme of PM Awas Yojana, it is planned to construct and provide 80 lakhs household to be provided house to stay, right? Tap water facility, the government is planning to provide 3.8 crores household the tap water facility. If you ever visit some area where there is a shortage of water, friends, you will realize the plight and the problem with the people are facing in that area. The ladies, the women have to travel kilometers and miles together to fetch the water. So providing clean, safe drinking water is also a priority. For that also, the budget is having resources that are allocated. So these are inclusive development measures. All these measures are inclusive development, right? Coming to reforms. On reform measures, you will find several announcements. Look at the first 2 points. Nearly 25,000 compliances are reduced. This is what is announced in the parliament by the finance minister. And 1,486 union laws were repealed. So what it shows, ease of doing business. This is nothing but ease of doing business. Government by such policy announcement is making the environment for businessmen industries such so that they are encouraged to start, encouraged to make more investment and country will develop, right? Even urban areas are also not spared. See, that is also one of the criticisms that in any budget, always it is the rural area which is given emphasis, right? But friends, our country is having that ground realities, as I told you, and all of you may be aware of it. India means rural areas, isn't it? A country where there are 6 lakhs villages. How many? 6 lakhs villages. A country with 6 lakhs villages and country with not even 50 large cities. What is the meaning of large city? Where population is exceeding 1 million. We have around 53, 54 large cities in India, where population is more than 1 million, right? And the villages are 6 lakhs. So naturally focus area will be the rural areas, right? But it doesn't mean that government want to neglect urban areas. Even in urban area, there is an inclusive problem. There is a poverty. Urban poverty is altogether different issue, isn't it, right? So for urban area development, the government has announced that a committee is appointed. Committee will look into this particular problem and committee will give the recommendation. So that is also one of the reform measure. Introduction of e-passport. If you want to stay at global level along with other countries, these kind of changes are required, right? So this is also one of the steps which is useful to the people who are traveling abroad, who are planning to travel abroad. Fast issue of passport, right? Easy with minimum procedure, with less procedure, when they can get the passport. So for that purpose, e-passport, now the government has announced. Same way, as a part of Atmanirbhar Bharat, even in the defense production, as high as 68% dependence on domestic industry, government is planning. This is a particular area that is also very controversial, right? To a large extent, India was depending all these years on other countries as far as the defense goods and defense spare parts are concerned. Not only arms and ammunition, but even spare parts which are used in arms and ammunition. India was heavily depending on import and on other countries. But in this budget, it is announced that 68, almost 70% of the production which is required for defense sector and defense goods that will be produced in India itself, Atmanirbhar India, under Atmanirbhar India, right? So these are the reform measures. One of the most important reform measures where finance students will take a lot of interest, and that is government has announced that central bank will issue digital currency, right? Now, what is this digital currency? This is answer to cryptocurrency. With respect to crypto also, some of the announcement is made. Crypto is brought under the tax net. Any profit which you make by dealing in cryptocurrency, you have to pay tax, right? So that announcement is known and it is widely publicized and wide publicity is given. But this is central bank digital currency. So what is the difference between central bank digital currency and cryptocurrency? You can organize my guest lecture for that separately. I will explain to you in detail. But right now, I will just tell you in one sentence. Once the digital currency is issued by central bank, it is a legal tender. It is a legal tender currency. Crypto is not legal tender in India. You may say that in El Salvador, it is illegal. El Salvador is a very small, tiny country. You can't compare El Salvador with India, right? Cryptocurrency is different. Central bank digital currency is different. Central bank digital currency is a legal tender. It is money which is recognized by the authority. It is money where central bank is taking responsibility. And why central bank is planning to issue digital currency? Well, it has several advantages. For example, the cost of issuing currency, the logistic cost, all this you can save. Am I right or no? See, physical currency, when the central bank want to issue, central bank has to print the currency. So the cost of printing, cost of distribution, right? All these costs you can save. Secondly, more than that, another advantage is you can control black money transaction and money laundering. This will be under check when central bank digital currency will be circulated. But let me tell you, it is not very easy in India because the use of central bank digital currency requires financial literacy. Is that clear? You see, again, ground realities. Again and again, I am talking about ground realities. People of India don't understand even now what is check and what is demand draft. So when they have to understand digital currency, that financial literacy is required. So it is not that within 1 year, you will not find hard currency at all. It will disappear and everything will be in the form of digital currency. Don't be under that impression. It will be not that fast, right? Physical currency will not lose its importance so fast, but it is an answer to the people who are crazy about cryptocurrency, So that is also a reform measure to my mind. Then banking sector, I would like to cover for two reasons. Being a finance professor, this is a sector which is very close to my heart. And this is my subject. So friends, in this budget, you find there are some very good announcements with respect to banking sector. Look at the first one. Post office will be brought under core banking solution. This is a very good step to my mind. This will lead to financial inclusion in a very rapid way, right? I was telling you just now that India is having nearly 6 lakhs villages, right? How many branches of banks that we have in India? Nearly 1,35,000 branches of banks. Taking into account even those branches which you find in big cities. So 6 lakhs villages and not even 1.5 lakh branches of bank. So how you will do financial inclusion? Government is depending on technology. All of you know, banking correspondent, cooperative sector. Government is depending on all these measures, right? But post office, if the post office are converted into bank, then it is a big step to reach out to the people who are located at remote places, because we have nearly 155,000 post offices in India, 1,55,000. So this is a step when the post office are brought under core banking solution. People in the villages gradually, not immediately, gradually, they will also start using digital payment. they will also start depending on remittance method, transferring money from one place to another through technology. For so many years in India, perhaps you may be knowing, for remittance, there was only one method available, and that is money order. That's all. Except money order, there was no other method available. But with the help of technology, by covering post office under the core banking solution, you can make good reform on this front. Same way, it is announced that 75 digital banks will be started. In 75 districts, 75 digital banks will be started. So State Bank is taking leadership in this particular, for this particular measure, right? So that is also a reform. Okay. Look at the next one, coordination measures between banks, NBFC, microfinance institution, and business correspondents. See, today, if you talk about banking facility and financial inclusion in rural areas, there are multiple institutions which are working. We have cooperative banks, we have regional rural banks, we have NBFC, microfinance institution, commercial bank. So many institutions are there in the rural area. So the problem is each institution is working in a different direction, right? What is required is coordinated approach, right? So that's the reason government has started lead bank scheme. But even then, this coordination is a challenge. So in this budget, even that is also announced that coordination measures will be taken for all those institutions which are operating in the rural areas. And definitely this responsibility will be given to the NABARD. That is not announced in the budget, but definitely it will be given to the NABARD, which is doing excellent job with respect to rural banking and rural development, right? And the last one with respect to banking sector is change in insolvency and bankruptcy code. See, friends, you know that our country is facing one of the big banking problems. And what is that problem? Non-performing assets. Almost 10%, precisely 8.5 to 9% of the total advances are bad loans, right? If you look at the global standard, if you look at the global average, it is nearly 1.5 to 1.75% is the total NPA. Whereas in India, we have between 8 to 9%. So non-performing assets is one of the biggest problem, which is making our banking system weak. So to solve this problem, there are several legislation and several measures government has taken. In 2016, Insolvency and Bankruptcy Code and Insolvency and Bankruptcy Law was passed. And bankers, policymakers, economists, what they feel that it will be a game changer, right? Of course, it has performed well. I'm not denying that compared to SARFAESI Act and compared to other measures. Insolvency and Bankruptcy Law has played very important role for recovering and controlling non-performing assets. But even in this law, certain limitations were discovered by the experts and the bankers. When they have actually worked in this environment, they have discovered certain limitations. So in this budget, it is announced that these limitations will be plugged. These limitations will be removed. So that is also one of the very important reform measures which will help our banking system to strengthen, and in turn, our financial system and economy will also become strong. Then, another important last parameter is with respect to fiscal management. Again, a subject which is very close to my heart. How the government is planning to manage their finance. Let us look at that. Yeah. So, if you see the fiscal deficit figure, then what you find is it is almost within limit of 21-22. Last year, finance minister has announced that fiscal deficit will be 6.8% of the GDP. the revised estimate is giving the figure 6.9%. So we can say that it is very close to the target. Sorry. So as far as last year revenue management and fiscal management is concerned, what we feel is that the government performance is good. But let me tell you, one of the reasons for this is there is increase in the tax revenue to the extent of 16%. That's the reason this position is there. Anyway, but we can appreciate that fiscal deficit last year was under check. Next year, 22-23, it is estimated at 6.4% of the GDP. Now, 6.4% is not very less, right? If you talk about FRBM, Fiscal Responsibility and Budget Management Act, then the standard and the benchmark which is set over there, compared to that, this is on the higher side. But consecutive 2 years of COVID pandemic and international development, global inflation is knocking our door. Taking into account all these factors, 6.4% is not very bad. As far as the tax revenue collection is concerned, 22-23, it is 19.34 lakh crore. This is net tax revenue collection, not gross, because whatever gross tax revenue government collects from that, government has to share to the concerned state as per the recommendation of the Finance Commission. Probably you may be knowing. So net tax revenue collection is 19 lakhs crores and expenditure is 39 lakhs crores. So fiscal deficit is around 16.61 lakhs crore. So this is the balance sheet of our government for next year. Now, what is important is you have to not only look at the quantity of fiscal deficit, you have to look at the quality. This is important. Quantity, government can claim that we are within limit. But look at the quality of fiscal deficit. So what exactly you mean by quality of fiscal deficit? Quality of fiscal deficit means revenue deficit to fiscal deficit ratio. Ratio of revenue deficit to fiscal deficit, right? What I mean to say, on revenue front, how much money the government is falling short of, and overall, how much money the government is falling short of. So if you calculate from the statistics and the figures which are given in the finance bill, if you calculate the ratio of revenue deficit to fiscal deficit, it is 59.60%. It is almost 60%. Right? Now, what is the meaning of this? You see, a layman perhaps find it difficult to understand. What is the meaning of this discussion that I am doing? Right? See, it's very simple to understand. When your ratio of revenue deficit to fiscal deficit is higher, it means whatever money which the government is planning to borrow, whatever money which government is planning to borrow, from that money, 60%, as high as 60% will be spent to meet revenue expenditure, right? So is it a prudent finance? Now even a layman can also say, see friends, if it is your income, and if you spend your income for some expenses, which is of revenue nature, at times it is okay. But when you borrow fund, it is your responsibility, your liability. It is a capital receipt. Can you spend capital receipt to meet revenue expenditure? This is never a prudent finance, right? So friends, this is called fiscal deficit and quality of fiscal deficit. So government is planning and government is successful in keeping the fiscal deficit as per the promise and the budget estimation that they have done. But if you look at the quality of fiscal deficit, then the performance is not excellent, right? It means you are borrowing money and spending money. You are not borrowing money and investing money for such purpose where there is some revenue generation. Is that clear? So that is what you have to look at, right? So these are some of the areas on the basis of which I analyze the budget of any government. Some of the issues and challenges, couple of slides. Now, I will just talk about some issues and challenges the government will be going to face in 22-23, right? No doubt, for growth front, they have done nicely. Infrastructure development, nice announcement is there. Inclusive growth, good measures are taken. Fiscal management, it's okay. Performance is not very good, but certain other issues and challenges, right? So the GDP growth estimated 9.2%, and it is announced, that we are able to achieve 9.2% GDP growth. But I think you will agree with me, it is not as great as such, Reason because you have to take into account the negative growth that we had last year, right? Last year. So from that negative growth, now we are coming to positive, and that's the reason this 9.2 figure is there. 9.2% figure is there. But even then, next year, the target which is put up between 8 to 8.5% is also encouraging, no doubt about it. As I said in the beginning, that India is one of the fastest growing economy in the world, right? So that is one challenge. Maintain the growth rate at 8 to 8.5% would be a challenge for the government. In the current year, I have already covered this point. In the current year, fiscal deficit is well maintained, right? This is due to, as I said, 16% increase in the revenue. Revised estimate is putting revenue collection of the government more by 16%. But the question is whether the same trend will continue next year, whether the same trend will continue in future. That is a big issue. So raising of the fund by way of tax is a challenge for the government. Yeah, that is one. And that's the reason government is depending on borrowing. Government has planned borrowing of nearly 15 lakhs crores. 15 lakhs crores is the borrowing government is planning in 22-23. Government is heavily depending on disinvestment of public sector undertaking, right? Of course, for 22-23, a very conservative estimate finance minister, she has put up only 65,000 crores, because last year it was 1,50,000 crores she has estimated, and not even a 50% is realized. So this year, conservative estimate is there, 65,000 crores, but heavily government is depending on disinvestment of LIC. Government is expecting nearly 75,000 crores to 1 lakh crore, right? So we have to see that from where the funds will be raised. So this is one of the challenges. Similarly, rise in the international oil price. I already talked to you. Oil is a very sensitive commodity for our country. So rise in the oil price, rise in the gas price, coal price. This will have big impact on our economy. So that will be another issue or the challenge in 22-23. One more challenge is global inflation. As I said, government is planning to borrow 15 lakhs crores. So when such a huge amount government is planning to borrow, definitely it will have impact on the interest rate. Interest rate is going to go up. At global level also, inflation, as I said, knocking the door. Federal Reserve is planning to increase the interest rate. Even RBI is also under pressure. Let us see the next monetary policy committee, what they decide. Probably they may increase the repo rate. RBI is also under pressure to increase the interest rate. So what will be the impact of all this thing? The impact is very simple to understand. Inflation. Inflation will be the impact. So we have to be ready for inflation. And as you know, inflation is a hidden tax, particularly on poor. Inflation is a hidden tax on poor. Inflation is a hidden tax on middle class people. So that's the reason middle class people are disappointed. Of course, middle class people are disappointed because there is a no tax benefit, right? Because There are very few middle class people, they will understand these, complexities of inflation and borrowing by the government from the market, and it will lead to increase in interest rate and inflation and all that. So middle class is certainly disappointed because no tax benefit is announced and given in this budget. But let me tell you, friends, now the evaluation of the budget is also changed. Once upon a time, the budget was evaluated based on this: how much benefits are given to the people, how much tax is reduced. But now you have to look at the budget from a different angle. What are the growth measures? What are the development measures? What are the inclusive measures? Because all this will lead to growth in short, medium period of time, right? So that is one of the challenge. And one more challenge, that is poor domestic demand. All these years, you must be knowing, we were proudly saying that Indian economy is very strong because of high domestic demand. Still it is there, but compared to the normal period under pandemic, this demand is also one of the issue, one of the challenge, and that in turn will lead to small scale industry, other industries, and other problems arises. So friends, this is how the proposal in the budget you find. And let me end my talk with a quotation from our ex-Prime Minister, Shri Atal Bihari Vajpayee. His quotation is like this. He said, empowering the individual means empowering the nation. When you empower the individual, you are empowering the entire nation. And empowerment is best served through rapid economic growth. So in this budget, what you find, there are sufficient measures for rapid economic growth. There are sufficient measures to empower the individual. I have already described to you. So this you will find in this budget. So on this front, this budget is to be appreciated. Finance Minister deserve congratulations, right? So empower is best served through rapid economic growth with rapid social changes. So that is a still challenge in our country. See, as far as rapid economic growth is concerned, year after year, government is taking appropriate policy measures. Probably we could expect that economic growth will be rapid, but we have one big challenge, and that is social change. On that front, still we have to do many things. And here, let me tell you, it is not only government which will be able to do. As far as the growth is concerned, you can say it is a government responsibility. Government has to do something for the growth. But for social change, it is our responsibility. Please understand, it is our responsibility. Since there are many students in this lecture, this nation is having a lot of expectation from you, not for economic growth. Don't worry about that. What is expectation this nation is having is social change, and you should be the agent of that social change. Thank you very much. With this word, I end my talk. Thank you very much. In case you have any question, I would be glad to answer.
Thank you so much, sir. I request students to direct their questions on the chat box to me or Parth Shah. If any faculty member has any question, they can unmute themselves and ask the question.
Please.
Yeah, if I may ask, may I ask?
Yeah, please, please.
As sir, like it is assumed, or it is always thought of by the citizens, especially for all Indian citizens.
Mm.
What is the takeaway, or what is the benefit to middle class society? So always I think the budget is almost looked into the middle class society and the lower class of the society about that.
Yeah.
And in the current budget, when it is said like income tax slab was much expected like to extend it because there was stress on the middle class society, and why the government is still, they don't think like, supporting or maybe attracting, giving the like more relaxation in slab, so more and more people they can participate in the filing income tax. I think that it has increased tremendously, but there's still a long way to go. I think in India, paying income tax is on very lower rate.
Yeah.
So any your thoughts on
Yeah.
this?
Yes. I can share my thoughts on this. You see, if you talk about the current budget, no doubt, as I said, direct benefits you don't find in the current budget with respect to income tax slab or even standard deduction. People were expecting that there will be enhancement in the standard deduction, which is currently 50,000. But that expectation is also not met, right? So in the current budget, if you talk about, some measures are taken which will give benefit to the people in short term, if not short term, in middle term, right? But again, one can argue that what is the point in that we want benefit right away, right? See, I'll tell you, the reason is, if any tax concession or any tax benefit is given to middle class, then immediately it will affect the revenue of the government, right? Now, government is already facing challenge of meeting higher expenditure due to pandemic, due to giving subsidies, benefits to the people due to pandemic. Nearly 80 crores people are provided food subsidies in the pandemic, perhaps you may be knowing. Yeah. So because of this rising expenditure of pandemic, rising expenditure for development, government has to mobilize the revenue. Now, if they give concession, tax concession or benefit to middle class people or general income tax concession, then revenue will be one of the challenge. That is one thing. Okay. Secondly, as you said, that if some tax concession is given or tax rate is reduced or something, more and more people will be brought under the income tax net, right? If you look at the average income of our people, then it will take still time to bring majority of the people under the tax net. Though the government is working in that direction, but still it will take time. So the marginal rate of tax that we have at present, 30%, if it is reduced further, then revenue of the government will definitely going to adversely affect. So that's the reason government is going little slow on that. That is my answer is. There is one, I was talking to the students, perhaps they may be in the class, in the last class only, incidentally, this point came, I was teaching them public policy. There is a theory by one American economist called Arthur Laffer. There is something called Laffer curve. So that theory says that when the tax rate is lower, revenue collection of the government is lower. That is very simple to understand. When the tax rate is very high, then also revenue collection of the government will be lower. Why this is so? Because people will evade the tax. If the tax rate is very high, the way we were having in 70s, mid 70s, when the tax rate, marginal tax rate was as high as 75%. So in those days, tax evasion was very high, right? So the Laffer theory says that if the tax rate is too low, revenue collection will be lower. If the tax rate is too high, due to evasion, revenue collection will be lower. So if you want maximum revenue collection, tax rate should be reasonable. And 30% is considered to be reasonable, taking into account the size of our economy. So government will go very slow with respect to reducing the individual tax rate. Right? So I hope I have answered the question.
Yes, it was.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, sir. There are some of the requests from students that if it is possible, you can share the PPT with them.
Certainly, it is for you only. It is not a work of some great intellectual work or something. You can also make this PPT. I will definitely share with you.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you.
This is all what I did. I have done interpretation with whatever experience that I have, right? I have gone through the budget document in detail, and whatever experience, as I said, whatever wisdom, whatever I understand, I have just interpreted and put up the point. So this is not a work of great intellectual person or something. I will definitely share with you.
Yes, sir. So
Sure.
the next question coming up from
Yeah.
a student side is it's a question coming up from a stock market enthusiast.
Hmm.
He's saying that since March 2020, abundant number of retail investors have
Yeah.
entered the stock market.
Correct. Correct.
Okay, and every month around 30 to 40 lakhs people are joining it in the market.
Correct.
So do you think the retail investors should have given some tax concession like reducing security transaction tax, etc.?
Again, the same point, in this particular budget, government don't wanted to give any concession. That is very clear. That is very clear from the tax front, because revenue mobilization is a challenge for the government, right? That's the reason, as I said in the talk also, that heavy dependency is there on monetization of assets and privatization of LIC, and this disinvestment. So definitely government will not give any tax concession, because more retail investors are coming to the market. See, government is having different agenda, stock market, no doubt, we say it's a barometer of the economy and all that. But tell me, what is the percentage of population investing money in stock market? Focus of the government is more on saving mobilization through banking sector. As I told you, poverty, financial illiteracy is a challenge on which the government's focus is. And one more point I want to add over here. This sudden interest in the stock market by the retail investor, one of the reason is pandemic and adverse impact on the income of the people from whatever traditional source that they were getting. All of you are aware that many people have lost their job. Many people have faced the problem of cut in their salary, right? Uncertainty. So because of that reason, something has to be done to supplement the income. Now, what they can do? You tell me what they can do. So they feel stock market is a better option. Why? Because stock market, they see many success stories. They listen to various success stories. And therefore, they are tempted, they are attracted by stock market. I'm not saying it is wrong. I'm not saying that, right? But they have to be very careful. That is the point. The people should be very careful. So that's the reason, as far as any tax benefit is concerned, because more retail investors are coming to this market and therefore it is to be given. I don't think government will think in that direction.
Yes, sir. So there is one more question related to stock market itself.
Please.
So one of the students is requesting to share your thoughts on upcoming huge IPO of LIC. So, and whether the government will able to meet the demand from the market or not.
Yeah. See, my view is definitely government will be able to meet the demand, because you must be knowing that even in earlier cases also, several cases, whenever any disinvestment was to be done, and suppose there is a poor response, right? Government was looking at LIC only, because LIC is having huge fund, right? So LIC is having a very strong balance sheet, number one. Almost monopoly as far as the life insurance in India is concerned. And performance is also very good. So these three front, strong balance sheet, large amount of money, performance is good, almost monopoly, though there are private sector life insurance companies are also there, but even then, insurance means LIC. So I don't doubt this issue will definitely be successful. Yeah, and this is the one of the method on which the government is depending for their revenue mobilization for 22-23. Yeah.
Okay, the third question coming up is that why did the budget not touch up the need for the Indian middle class? What do you think about this budget from perspective of middle class?
Yeah, certainly. See, as far as the middle class is concerned, I have already shared my view and I already given the answer. Let me repeat, in this budget, there are no measure which is directly having any benefit to the middle class. That is one certain thing. Secondly, as I have put up in my presentation, on the contrary, there is a possibility of inflation, not possibility, certainly. So middle class will suffer because of the inflation. But let me put one more thing here. Who bothers about middle class? What is the benefit of protecting and giving benefits to the middle class? If I may tell you very frankly, where is the vote bank in India? Where is the vote bank? In middle class? No.
Middle class.
Yes. So, I mean, government will go slow as far as benefits to the middle class is concerned. Government will definitely target people who are economically lower class or allied class for different reason altogether, isn't it? Yeah. So that is the issue. So middle class, definitely in the current budget, there are no measure which will help or which will give any benefit to the middle class. I agree with that. That is one of the limitation of this budget. I am also a middle class person, so it is true. Yes.
Yes, so just some couple of more questions.
Yeah. Please go ahead. Please go ahead.
So basically, in the earlier regimes, there were no frequent disinvestment of PSU. And so, as of now, how do you think that it is going to impact the national and global level?
Repeat the question. There is no disinvestment in PSU frequently. Correct.
Yeah, there were no
Earlier.
frequently.
Correct.
Earlier.
Correct.
Time.
Correct. And now they have started. Why this is so? That is the question, right?
Yes.
So this is purely because of change in the economic philosophy. For so many years in India, I think you may be knowing, we were following socialistic pattern of society for so many years, isn't it? Socialistic pattern of society, you understand what is the meaning of that? More importance to public sector. Socialistic pattern of society means the philosophy, economic philosophy of the government was giving more importance to public sector and less importance to private sector. But since 1990, usko bhi bahut time ho gaya, but 1990, there is a change in the policy, privatization, globalization, liberalization, perhaps you may be knowing, right? So that policy is adopted by the government, and under this policy of privatization, more and more public sector undertakings are to be converted into private sector. And why this is so? Why there is a change in the policy? Because most of the public sectors were in red. Most of the public sector were facing efficiency, lower efficiency, lower productivity, wastage, these kind of issues and challenges. Overstaffing, let me tell you, most of the public sector of India, they are facing from this problem. Lower efficiency, lower productivity, overstaffing, wastages, these issues. So if you want to make them efficient, what is to be done? So that is to be privatized. Once it will come under the control of the private sector, then definitely there will be more accountability. Typical problem of public sector, probably you might have studied in economics, I don't know. There are typical problem of public sector. So that's the reason government want to convert the public sector into private sector. That is one. Number two, huge amount of money government has invested in public sector, correct? Public sector means investment by the government. Now this investment is not fetching any return because of low productivity, low efficiency. This money was not giving any return to the government. So government want to withdraw, get back that investment. So how to do it? Privatize it, right? So one more question here you can ask me. When the government is planning to convert inefficient public sector into private sector, right? Do you think that private sector will buy that public sector? That's the question that you should ask me, isn't it? Why they should buy these kind of inefficient undertakings? Answer to that question is private sector is having confidence of turnaround. They have confidence of turnaround, and private sector will be very choosy. They will go for only that unit to take over where there is a potential of turnaround. And that is also the problem government is facing. Sometimes government want to sell the shares of public sector undertaking, but there are no takers. So at that time, government will look at LIC, government will look at State Bank of India, right? State Bank of India, LIC belongs to the government, so they will support, right? And as you know, they have huge amount of resources, so they will support the government to privatize this public sector undertaking. So that's the reason there is a change in the economic philosophy of the government, private sector from public sector. I think this question also I have answered. I don't know.
Yes, one more question is that, as you know that crypto market is the market at the global level.
Correct.
And it is one of the most volatile market.
Correct.
So as India has India will be launching its own digital currency, and it will be regulated by the
Reserve Bank.
government and RBI. So can we expect the same level of volatility in that particular cryptocurrency?
Cryptocurrency or RBI currency?
No, RBI currency.
RBI currency, no. RBI currency will not have volatility like cryptocurrency. And reason is very simple. The currency which is legal tender is valued on the basis of fundamentals. Cryptocurrency is valued differently. Cryptocurrency is valued based on the market forces. If the demand for cryptocurrency is more, the price will go up. If the demand will fall due to any reason, price will crash, right? Whereas value of rupee, how value of rupee is determined? Rupee, see, when central bank is going to issue digital currency, it will be digital rupee, right? Tell me how value of rupee is determined? Based on fundamentals. What is GDP? What is export? What is industrial output? What is contribution in the world trade? Isn't it, right? Whereas value of crypto is depending on this? No. So please understand the fundamental difference, Crypto, to my mind, if I have to put, crypto is like one commodity. I will not use even the word commodity. Crypto is like a piece of stone. एक stone है, एक पत्थर है, पत्थर का टुकड़ा है, right? जिसको लोग अलग अलग वैल्यू देते हैं, right? Somebody will say this is of very high value. Somebody will say this is of not value, and they play in that stone, right? Somebody is ready to pay $5,000. Somebody is ready to pay $200. They play. So let them play. It has nothing to do with any responsibility on the part of the government. Are you getting me? Say, for example, let me give you one more example. Suppose I have to pay you 10,000 rupees. Suppose I have borrowed from you 10,000 rupees, okay? And I have to return 10,000 rupees to you. Suppose I will not pay you that 10,000. What you can do? You can do many things. You can go to the court, correct? You can force me to pay that. Prosecution, legal action can be taken against me. What happens in case of crypto? Suppose I have to give you 10,000, वो तो बहुत ज़्यादा हो गया, because crypto में तो dealing 0.2 से होता है ना, 0.2 crypto is purchased because it is priced at $8,000. So 0.5 crypto is purchased. So suppose I have to pay you some crypto, and if I tell you I will not give you, let me tell you, you can't do anything because it is not regulated. There are no rules and regulations. You can't do anything. Whereas in case of legal tender, you can do many things. So that is the difference. So under the present budget, you know what the government has done? Government has observed that people are playing with this stone. Let them play. But उसमें से हमको revenue मिलना चाहिए. Therefore 30% tax. Therefore 30% tax. See, let me tell you, people are under the impression that because the crypto is brought under the tax net, it means now the crypto will be legalized, now the crypto will replace the currency. All that speculation is going on. On Thursday, Mr. Somnath, you know who is he? Our finance secretary. Mr. Somnath is a finance secretary, Government of India. He has made very clear statement that crypto will never be a currency in India. Very clearly, he has made the statement on Thursday, just day before yesterday. Right? So people are under the impression that because the tax is imposed on that, so now it will be legalized and everything will be fine and all that, right? But no, government has taken the opportunity of raising the fund. And second, there is one more objective. See, by this way, indirectly, government want to discourage people to deal in crypto. Why government want to discourage people to deal in crypto? Can you tell me? Why they want to discourage people? Because it is risky. Because it is risky, right? So you will ask me another question. If it is risky, I am taking risk. Why the government should bother? See, because it is risky, I am taking risk. I am prepared to take risk. Why the government should bother? Let me tell you, modern government is working on the philosophy of welfare state. I'll give you one analogy. Why government is insisting that when you travel two-wheeler, you have to wear the helmet. Accident होगा, injury होगा, तो आपका होगा. Government को क्या करना है? Why government is insisting that you must wear the helmet? Because government is for the welfare of the people. So that's the reason government want to discourage. Are you getting me? Why government is putting heavy tax on cigarette and alcohol? Because government want people to discourage the consumption of that commodity. But if people want to consume that in spite of that, then it's okay. And second purpose which is served is government is getting revenue by imposing tax on cigarette, alcohol, cryptocurrency. Government will get good amount of revenue. And to some extent, people will be discouraged. Isn't it, right? So this is based on welfare state philosophy. One more question may arise in your mind. See, I am only asking question and I am only giving you answer. In fact, you should ask. Anyway, so one more question you may ask me. As I told you that there is a volatility in crypto and therefore it is risky. So stock market में volatility नहीं है क्या? Yes, I'll complete. Yeah. Stock market में volatility नहीं है क्या? Even in stock market there is volatility. So why on stock market there is no heavy tax and government don't want to discourage? Let me tell you, stock market is a recognized financial market. It's a recognized financial institution, isn't it? Crypto is not that recognized. Who is creating crypto, you tell me? That program, that software, isn't it? Some software, I don't know more about it.
Decentralized ledgers.
Yeah, something like that, isn't it, right? So that's the reason with respect to crypto, it is like this. I think we should end this lecture because, people may be getting late or something. I would love to answer your question. You can invite me on some other occasion for any type of question and on any subject relating to finance and economics. I would be glad to answer, but I think we should stop because people want to leave.
Yes, sir. Sure.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
I'm
All
getting
the
some
other
message.
queries, I'll
Please. I would be glad. I would be glad to answer. And if you want some guest lecture on any of this topic, you can tell me. We can arrange. Yeah.
So Dr. Pankaj Trivedi sir started with the growth measures. After then, he talked about PM Gati Shakti, inclusive development, reform measures, banking sector, and finally concluded with some issues and challenges about GDP growth rate estimation and some numbers about fiscal management, fiscal deficit of 2021-22. And also talked about the GDP numbers, that is around 6.9% against 6.8 that is projected. Thank you so much, sir, for joining in. This is definitely a very brainstorming and enlightening session. And this session definitely gave us a lot of clarity about budget 2022. And the takeaways from this session will definitely help us to work on it and reach greater heights in future.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you.
So,
Thanks a
sir,
lot.
on behalf of Guest Lectures Committee, KJ
Yeah.
Somaiya Institute of Management,
Yeah.
I want to take this opportunity to thank our guest speaker, Professor Pankaj Trivedi, and all the faculty members for joining and to give their vital time from their busy schedule to share the invaluable knowledge with us. And yes, thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much to entire guest lecture team and my student friends, all my faculty colleagues. Thank you very much. Yeah. Okay. I will share my presentation to guest lecture committee, Utkarsh or anybody, those who have sent me the mail. I got the mail from Priyanka, right? Priyanka and Sunil. So मैं उनको भेज देता हूँ. And you can look at that. Yeah, sure.